Hello everyone, this is Riddhi Sorrell from hackervlogenglish, and today's my video is on buffer overflow vulnerability. As many students have asked like what is buffer overflow and what this vulnerability meant for and how we have to find this in the code. So these three questions I'm going to answer today, because what is buffer overflow vulnerability, first we'll look into it, and then we will be understanding that what actually the points by which buffer overflow occurs, and then second we'll be taking as mitigations, and of course we will be seeing the code practical into it. All right, so let's start quickly. Here it is obviously a bookish language written here, but I'll explain you. Buffer overflow vulnerability is a type of software security flow that occurs when an application or program does not properly validate and control the amount of data that can be written into the specific buffer. So when more data is written to a buffer then it can hold, the access data overflow into adjacent memory location, potential overwriting critical data, and even leading to arbitrary code execution. Okay, so basically buffer overflow vulnerability is only simply related to the memory because we have the fixed size storage in the memory. But when we put data more than the sufficient memory present, then it occurs for buffer overflow, and it can hang the system, it can hang the server, it can have different exploitations for that. So let's understand. Now we have how buffer overflow vulnerability typically occurs, because sometimes what happens, we are lacking in like how this vulnerability occurring, because once we know that this vulnerability is occurred just because of this, then definitely we can take care of that, right? So here we have insufficient input validation. First of all, buffer overflow occurs when input validations are not properly configured. All right, so whatever be the language we are using, but we have to take care of the input validations, and that should be proper. It should not like insufficient. So the vulnerability often arises when user or external input is not adequately validated or checked for the size before being placed into the buffer. So let's suppose we have a bucket of 2 liters. All right, now if that water is up to the mark, like only single drop can come out and it shows the overflow of the bucket, right? So in the similar way, we have the servers and we have the memories where we have the fixed size, but when we put data more than the actual size, then definitely this problem occurs. Attackers can manipulate the input data to exceed the buffer's allocated spaces. Now, second comes for the memory corruption. So, in the memory corruption, what we have is simply it corrupts the memory, because if memory is corrupted, then definitely overflow occurs. So, if the input data overflows the buffer, it can override the data in adjacent memory location. Now we have exploitations. Attackers can craft input data in a way that when it overflows the buffer, overwritten memory contains malicious code or command. Okay, this code can then be executed, potentially giving the attacker control over the application system or device. So basically what happens, these 3 points are main listed points where we can see that overflow vulnerability occurs. Now let's move towards the serious consequences holding by buffer overflow vulnerability. So first of all, unauthorized access to the sensitive information. Obviously, when this overflow vulnerability occurs, unauthorized access gain the actual access of the information. So code execution with the privileges of the vulnerable application. Denial of services, that is the DOS attack occurs, and it can crash the servers and the database, whatever the attackers are putting on. Escalation of privileges, allowing an attacker to gain more control over the system. So obviously here privileges also take control by the attackers then. All right, so these are the lead consequences or the serious consequences by buffer overflow vulnerability. So hope you all are understanding how serious it can be. Now, first we'll understand the mitigation of these vulnerabilities. To prevent the buffer overflow vulnerabilities, developers should follow secure coding guidelines. So it should be noted by the developers that secure coding guidelines are very much important. So implementing proper input validations and size checks to ensure data fits within the buffer's boundary. It should be, this is the main important point, like for the proper input validation, that size need to be fixed, means we have to fix the length, Like suppose we are organizing some party and the room length or the room size for the party for the invitees obviously consumes 50 people in the room at a time, and we are inviting 100 people, then definitely it goes for the overflow part. All right. So second, using safer programming language that offers built-in bounds checking like C, C Sharp, Java, using secure programming libraries and frameworks, enforcing the principle of least privilege to restrict the damages. This is important. And regularly applying security updates is actually the medium by which we can save our code from buffer overflow vulnerability. Now let's move on the buffer overflow vulnerable code. So quickly understand this code. This is written in the C language, and this particular code just shows us the input given just to sorry input is given, but input is not safe. So for that, what we have to do is we simply have to put the patched code. And what we have to do in the patched code, we have to put some conditions during input of the data. And that can save our code much from the attackers. So hope you all like the video, and please do comment if you have any questions related to it, and please do comment if you like the video. Thank you so much.